Welcome, everybody. I'm ZS Caravallo from ZK Research, and I'm here with another ZKast video episode. As always, this is done in conjunction with eWEEK's eSpeak series. I'm alongside my host here, Mark Reed Edwards. Mark, this was Cisco Live Week. It was a pretty big week for Cisco. This was their first ever global Cisco Live event. Typically, they do that by region. They have a Cisco Live US, EMEA, Asia Pac, things like that. But the fact that it was an all digital format, they were actually able to do it globally and send out a consistent set of messages across the world. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Wonder what the future of events like this will be, whether they will have one global event or everybody's eager to get together once that's feasible, whether that will happen.
Yeah, I know their partner summit's coming up in September, and I think they're pushing Oliver Tusik, the person who runs the channel organization. He's pushing to have it live. So I suspect we'll have some coming back. I do think the ability to be able to deliver a consistent message across the globe all at once is pretty interesting. And they loaded the conference up with events, so or with news items. So they, I think they took advantage of the fact that they did have a global audience. I think they said typically Cisco Lives drive between 20 and 25,000 attendees. They said they'd have 100,000 people that had registered, and in I think 20 different countries or something. So it was, it drew a pretty good audience. Now, typically, what you have though, even when you do have the live event, you do still have the keynotes being streamed live, and you do wind up with a lot of attendees watching that. So, but that was a pretty big audience. So, and I was interfacing with a lot of the attendees through social media, and the people seem to like the content. I saw a lot of comments on Twitter about this being the best content people have had in a digital event. So the company did it well.
Yeah, and you got a cape or something, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. I didn't know this. They had a social media contest, and so they picked the top two. I don't know how they measured it, the top two influencers, and they gave me a little cartoon of the cape. So that was kind of cute. They're actually sending me a bobblehead based on that cape too. So
we'll have to feature that on a future ZKast.
Yeah, bobblehead edition.
So let's get into what actually happened at Cisco Live and start off kind of at the corporate level and their update around inclusivity.
Yeah, I will say the one big change that Cisco's had since Chuck Robinson became CEO is they're so much more active in the corporate social responsibility area. I didn't want to say the company wasn't before. They were certainly one of the leaders there. You think back to, one of the John Chambers-isms was the internet would help you change the way we work, live, learn, and play, and it certainly did that. But Chuck's taken it to an entirely different level. I think it was back in 2017, they made a commitment that they would positively affect 1 billion people by 2025. I think that's where it was. And they gave an update to that. That's now at 575 million. So they're more than halfway there. I actually thought they kind of sandbagged the number, frankly. I thought they would hit that number pretty easily. They're very active in the things they do. Now, the one thing I didn't know is that they actually measure themselves pretty hard. There's a number of activities that they do that they don't actually count in their numbers. So they want to directly impact people and have it be measurable. So, and so that includes people that join Network Academy, also known as, NetAcad, people that they've affected through their global citizen sponsorships and things like that. So they're doing good work there. We also gave an update that last year Cisco Live, they changed the mission from being the company that helps us work, live, learn, and play to using the network and Cisco technology to power an inclusive future for all. And that's got a lot of interesting sort of, juxtaposition. It's not just people in poor countries or people that are affected by social issues. It's everybody. You see some of the updates they've made to WebEx, which make it easier for older people to use. They've got speech interfaces, so maybe people that are handicapped can use it better. And so everything that company does now is about driving inclusivity. And so they gave an update on that, and then that's been a big driving mission, even to the point where during Jonathan Davidson's keynote, who's the head of mass scale infrastructure, and Frank Katsoudas, who's their chief people, process, and policy officer, I think is what they call it now. They talked about how there's 3 billion people in the world that still don't have good quality internet access, right? And there's a big chunk of that's in the US. And frankly, it's a little embarrassing for our country, but I understand why some other countries do. So they've been very active in 5G, rural broadband, things like that to drive more connectivity. Clearly, and the pandemic showed us this connectivity to the internet is a game changer to change the way, to help us learn remotely, to help us conduct business and things like that. And not having it actually is a pretty big disadvantage today.
Yeah. And so in addition to that, there were a ton of product related announcements. You want to start with the Thousand Eyes integration?
Yeah, Thousand Eyes was a pretty interesting acquisition. I liked it when they bought it. This was a company that, if you follow Thousand Eyes, there's lots and lots of network monitoring companies, but the difference with Thousand Eyes is they actually monitor the internet. And so they're able to tell you really interesting things like if you're a company and you've got a data center located in Asia Pacific, they can tell you there that maybe AWS performs better than Google Cloud. I don't know if that's true, but they can get you that kind of granular data. If you've got, if you're trying to use, WebEx or even Zoom or Microsoft Teams and it's not working properly, and it's, a lot of those things work over the top of the internet, they can tell you where in that internet connection it has issues. And so they've taken the Thousand Eyes intelligence now and they've made it pervasive across their company. Last year or earlier this year, I think it was, they announced some integration with Dynamics, which is their application performance monitoring software. So they've been touting this thing called full stack observability, in which if you're running an application, and as application performance is everything in companies, right? You've got good performing Salesforce, your company performs well. If it doesn't perform that well, you get frustrated workers and productivity goes down. But they can tell you anything from the network all the way up to things that are going on in the application with APIs and databases, where the problem might be. And historically, those groups worked in silos, and it was very difficult to figure point. In fact, one of the phrases that's commonly used in networking is something called mean time to innocence, where the network just, their whole goal is to prove it's not them. But that doesn't really help you solve the problem, right? It just helps you prove it's not you. And so with Cisco and AppD, with Thousand Eyes and AppD integration, that goes away. They also took Thousand Eyes agents and they've embedded them now into new Catalyst 9000 switches. So, and that's what's used to build company networks. And so you get that kind of cloud level intelligence all the way down to the corporate network. And so that was a good announcement from them. It was a good acquisition for Cisco. I was a big fan of Thousand Eyes before they bought them, and it's good to see the company, driving that the use of that product across its entire product line.
Right. And what would a ZKast be without mention of SASE?
Yeah, what does ZKast be without a mention of SASE? Because SASE is everywhere now today, right? So
yeah,
Cisco was a little late to the SASE game. I think they took their time getting there. Now, I do know that the way Gartner defines it as, purely edge delivered, I think didn't really work for Cisco, or cloud delivered, because they do sell a lot of infrastructure at the edge. And frankly, once you get into larger offices, that model of delivering things just from the cloud doesn't really work, because you wind up sending so much traffic to and from the cloud that that's more than your general network bandwidth. And so they have a lot of piece parts between security and their, Meraki and their edge network. And so they put together a comprehensive architecture. And I'm glad Cisco did that, because they can now, start to shape the SASE industry their own way, and given their market share, they should be doing that. It also includes some, element of network monitoring. And so visibility was a part of Gartner's definition. And I thought that was sort of lacking. But if they came out with a very, kind of comprehensive, like I said, end-to-end SASE architecture that takes advantage of their umbrella product, their Duo product, all their edge infrastructure. And so now, from a definitional perspective, their SASE includes everything from data loss prevention to remote browser isolation. They got malware detection. They have the network parts, of course. They have observability with Thousand Eyes. And so I think, for Cisco, given the breadth of portfolio they have on the networking and security side, it's good to see them bring all those things together and come out with, what I think is actually the broadest SASE framework in the industry.
And we've got everything gets a plus attached to it when it's something new. All those TV networks, Paramount Plus, and so forth. I'll get a little plus sign. And Cisco has its own plus now with Cisco Plus Network as a service offering.
Yeah, I think I should come up with a ZS Plus offering. So,
ZKast Plus.
Yeah. Well, actually, we do have that though with the eWEEK credit. So actually we should rename it to that. But anyways, so Cisco Plus is part of their network as a service offering. So historically, network products were bought one way. You bought the product, then you pay for it up front, and there you go. Now, a couple of years ago, they shifted to a subscription model where they decoupled the hardware purchasing from the software, but you still bought and owned the hardware, and then you paid a subscription fee for the software. Well, some customers just wanted to be able to buy the whole thing as a subscription fee. And so what Cisco Plus is, you can buy Cisco products now, not all of them, but just there's a handful of products that fall into that as a complete subscription offering. And so you don't actually own the infrastructure. It's sort of a subscription purchase, and then you can upgrade when you want to. And it should help customers stay current. It should help them upgrade more frequently. You can just think of a very simple consumer example, Mark. If you had to pay $1,200 every time you wanted to upgrade your iPhone, you might not do it very often. But if you pay your phone company, $40 a month and just in perpetuity, and then you can upgrade whatever you want, you're going to upgrade as soon as the latest and greatest thing comes out, right? So there's a lot of Cisco customers that have a lot of older gear on the network, and they've loaded the new gear up with a lot of new features in the area of security and observability and things. And so it behooves Cisco into helping their customers make sure they're current. The first Cisco Plus offering they came out with was Cisco Plus Hybrid Cloud, in which it brings together Cisco and third-party technology that's made up of servers, storage, network equipment, and the software to deploy a private cloud. So you basically get all the infrastructure and then you pay for it as a service. They're going to be launching Cisco Plus SASE. During this keynote, the SVP of Networking and Cloud, Todd Nightingale, talked about how agility is the new IT superpower, right? And I think if you think about what happened with the pandemic when we had to send everybody to work from home right away, clearly, the ability to be agile and change what the products you have was big. And so, the way Todd described it was Cisco Plus is everything you expect from Cisco, good quality products, plus, the ability, or plus more, so the ability to buy it as a service. And so that was, it was really interesting that other companies have tried this. I'm not sure the market was ready, but but I think we buy everything else as a subscription now. Why not network?
Sure. The combination of SASE and network as a service, Cisco Plus, is like crossing the streams. It feels like to me.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
So also they came out with some service provider updates.
Yeah, what would Cisco be without talking about the future of the internet? This was a good keynote session from Jonathan Davidson, the GM of the group. Last year they came out with their Silicon One, and so one of the things that's always helped Cisco maintain price performance leadership is the fact that they spin their own silicon. A lot of their competitors rely on merchant silicon, but when you spin your own silicon, you can build a lot of new features into it much faster. Now, the downside of spinning your own silicon, of course, is you have to spin your own silicon. And so once you get it to certain volume levels, it's actually cheaper than merchant silicon, but you have to have the volume to do it. So if you're a company that only sells a couple $100 million a year in network equipment, creating your own chips isn't really worth it. If you're Cisco that sells billions of dollars worth, then of course, it makes some sense. They gave an update to Silicon One. Now you can buy equipment that goes all the way up to 25 terabits of network performance, and it's fully programmable as well. So I think that from a performance perspective, that's the highest performing programmable silicon that's on the market. They talked, Jonathan Davidson talked about the Acacia acquisition and what that's going to allow to do for Cisco. And if you understand what coherent optics are, it's pretty cool technology. When you get up to optical transport, you generate more speed by transmitting more wavelengths of light. Right now, with coherent optics, you can change the modulation of the frequency of the light and actually drive even more bandwidth. And so now, through their optics, they can actually take performance to a whole another level. Of the 800 gig coming, 5G coming, and stuff, that becomes certainly important. They're working on an architecture which is their routed optical network, which brings together the optical layer 2 network and the layer 3 network, which is quickly the routed network. And so instead of having to run 2 networks, the service provider can run 1. And so they've got a lot of innovation coming in the service provider space. And frankly, this is an area that Cisco hasn't led in quite some time. But the release of the new 8,000 products, Cisco One, I think the acquisition of Luxtera they did a couple of years ago, and Acacia, puts them right back up there, with all the other companies. And this should help them with their web scale play as well. So that was a good set of announcements. Interesting.
How about passwordless interfaces? Something that was music to my ears.
Yeah. I'm still, we'll see how this goes. G2 Patel, the SVP of collaboration and security, talked about this. So they rolled out a new password authentication through their duo single sign-on. It takes advantage of things like Apple Face ID, Touch ID, Windows Hello. And so now you can use that to be able to access all your corporate systems through Duo passwordless. I think, passwords to me, Mark, have been something that we've had to get rid of for forever. And I asked G2, I said, does this allow companies to actually get rid of passwords? And he says, well, as a authentication vendor, Cisco can actually only do so much, because a lot of companies, from a compliance perspective, always make the fallback passwords, right? So until that part of it changed, we're going to have it. Even with your iPhone, you think you have Face ID. When you boot it up for the first time, what's it say? Please enter a password to enable Face ID. Why can't I enable Face ID to enable passwords, right? The other way around. But we're slowly getting there. I think, the problem that passwords have is when companies come out with policies that are too arduous, like you have to change every quarter, things like that, people will dumb down their passwords because it's hard to remember something that's complicated, right? Sometimes the policies that companies put in place around passwords actually create the reverse effect of making things more secure. I talked to Kevin Mitnick a couple of years ago, who's one of the world's most famous penetration testers. He was, arrested and thrown in jail for a little while and things like that. And all he does now is penetration testing. He said passwords through cloud apps is the easiest way for him to breach companies, especially when they have schemes like changing every quarter, because then they use simplified things like season and year. So right now people would be using winter 2021. Right? When it comes to change again, they'll be using spring 2021. So, but now with the dual passwordless, you can actually do everything through biometrics, which has come a long way in just a handful of years. So that's thumbs up for that one.
Yeah. How about WebEx? We're using Zoom right now, but WebEx is a great tool that a lot of people use.
Yeah, WebEx actually, WebEx is a great tool. I put it on par with Zoom as far as usability goes, and as far as a lot of the back end stuff goes, security and things like that. And nobody does a better job. In fact, I just written something from No Jitter that talked about kind of the history of when you think about Cisco. There was a perception that Cisco was behind Zoom, and they were as far as the whiz bang features go, virtual backgrounds and things, but the focus was different. Cisco's always sold WebEx into big banks and government institutions, so they always deferred security over everything, right? And so that's always been the case. Now it's funny because once the pandemic started, then those holes got exposed in Zoom, and they had to go fix those, right? So I think that the two products are very comparable. I do think where Cisco really excels, though, is all the stuff that surrounds WebEx, devices, things like that. One of the interesting things that they came out with, though, is with this term Zoom burnout has become very commonly used, right? Or video fatigue or whatever. And so they came out with something called personal insights, team insights, and organizational insights that lets individuals, organizations, and teams, right, look at how these products are being used. So from a personal level, I can see things like I'm joining X number of meetings per week, but I'm only attending, Y of them. Or when I'm in meetings, I tend to, turn video off and then multitask. And then it can make recommendations of on how to set up your day, and so it can help avoid some of that. I think the burnout aspect of this, especially considering we're moving into a world where it looks like work from home is going to be prolonged, I think is the ability to monitor what we're doing, how we're doing, and make changes becomes important. They announced a bunch of other things too. Just to finish the thought on the insights, I guess the organizational and team insights are a little bit different in that they aggregate up some metadata. The personal insights, they were very clear about this. This isn't meant for Big Brother to watch. Personal insights are for you only, right? No one else has access to those things. And I asked if they would share some of the personal insight information, at least at a metadata level, to allow users to be able to compare how you are with your peers. And they said, not right now. They want to make sure that people trust the systems and will use the data, and they'll tackle that down the road when they know what people want. So they're deferring to the most secure, like they always do. They're deferring to privacy, like they always do. And these features will fall in line with that. They did announce a couple of other features that were pretty cool. I'll just go through a couple that I thought were really interesting. One of them was, if you've ever attended a video conference with somebody that's in a meeting room, you can see all the people in the meeting room, but it's really hard to tell what that person's thinking versus that person's thinking, right? And so it kind of puts you at a disadvantage. They can take the camera stream now and split it. And so instead of showing one video of the room, and there's 4 people in there, they'll show 4 separate panes, each with the person's face. And so now it's like you're looking at everybody. And so that camera intelligence, I thought was really interesting. And they announced some other updates, like immersive presentation, where you're in front of your PowerPoint, so it's more like you're doing a real presentation. They announced gesturing last year. They came out with quite a few updates, and so it was it's good to see the evolution. Lastly, they brought the price of some of their devices down. When Javed Khan, the GM of the group, pre-briefed analysts, he said they realized the price points of some of their products really kept them at an executive level, but now they're bringing the price down where they can scale it across everybody. And given again people are working home, that was a good change.
That's great. And the final update was around DevNet.
Yeah, DevNet. What can I say about DevNet? DevNet is just taking off like gangbusters at Cisco. I'll admit, when Susie Wee took over the group, I looked at her and I said, "This is never going to work." just because I'd seen other instantiations of DevNet and they did not work, and I didn't think Cisco really had the desire to be a developer-focused company. But she willed this program into being in existence. Now there's like millions of people that have joined the program, and it lets you do more with your Cisco network. And so they came out with some updates. One is DevNet Infrastructure as Code Development Center. They have a SASE Development Center and a SecureX, which is their XDR development center as well. And so they're, as they continue to push forward with APIs and the products, there's really nothing you can't do through APIs. Now, one of the interesting factoids that I got from Susie is when they surveyed their base, they found that like almost 3/4 of their engineers at the time when they launched DevNet had never made a single API call. And so that's why they were doing so much with scripts and things like that. But now a lot of the stuff that you want to do, you can just do faster through APIs. And so if you go to the live events, and every live event I've been to since 2015, the DevNet area was planned. And so Cisco is a developer-focused company. I think this is sort of their secret weapon in a way, in that the media loves kind of the shiny new objects and things like that. But DevNet's putting Cisco on a path to really scale their engineer base, and that engineer base, frankly, has been their best, group of salespeople. People that work with Cisco gear like to work with Cisco gear. They recommend Cisco gear, and that keeps them in the market leading position that they're in. And so the infrastructure as code, SASE, and SecureX updates, expand the use of DevNet across different areas. So that was it, Mark. That was it. That was a lot of
This
news.
was a ZKast Plus. It was a lot longer than normal. So
yeah, it was a ZKast Plus. And as far as virtual events goes, this was a good one. I attended some other ones in the past where the content is spread out over multiple weeks, and it doesn't work very well. This was a concentrated 2-day event, and I thought, as far as the virtual event goes, this actually hit all the key points in a very short period of time. It wasn't so onerous that I had to keep going back, trying to figure out what things to watch. And like I said, I watched the Twitter stream, and the feedback from the users was pretty positive as well. So let's wrap this up here. On behalf of Mark Reed Edwards, my co-host, I'm Zeus Caravello from ZK Research, saying Thanks for watching. Don't forget to click the subscribe, and I'll see you next week.